As fans of the Philadelphia Eagles celebrate their first Super Bowl win, reaction is still pouring in about a commercial getting attention for all the wrong reasons. I'm talking about Dodge using the immortal words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to sell a pickup truck. Take a listen.
If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness.
After drawing backlash for using the passage from one of Dr. King's sermons, a statement from the King estate was released saying, quote, "We found that the overall message of the ad embodied Dr. King's philosophy that true greatness is achieved by serving others." Here to explain the controversy is national politics reporter for the Boston Globe, Asted Herndon. Asted, I was among those that was offended by using Dr. King's sermon as a way to sell trucks. And immediately I must say, Reverend Bernice King, his daughter, and Martin Luther King III, his son, said they did not approve of this and didn't know anything about it. Mm-hmm. But notwithstanding that, the fact that you would use this sermon that also denounced, by the way, buying cars that you couldn't afford as a way of the selling and the really trying to get people to buy your product is something that didn't sit well with a lot of us.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. I can tell you at the place I was watching the Super Bowl, there was a loud gasp that was let out when it became clear that this was a Dodge Ram commercial. I mean, people are upset for a couple of reasons. First off is, as you said, Dr. King was, the idea of using Dr. King's words, which were specifically about racial and economic justice, things that are very serious matters, things that he oriented his life around. The idea of using that to sell something in general is something that people are very uncomfortable with, something that I certainly understand the shock to. I think the second part here is that, as you said again, the message which was used from Dodge Ram, they're using a sermon in which he specifically denounced some of those capitalistic traits which they seem to be employing here. That message denounced car commercials and pushing people to obtain goods as a way of valuing their self-worth. And so to be able to co-opt those words to then sell a product is something that sent a lot of people looking sideways, to say, for lack of a better term, at Dodge.
Well, one of the things that I thought about, as you know, I became youth director of the New York chapter of Dr. King's organization. I was 13 the year he was killed, is that his last year or so, his emphasis was on economic accountability, corporations doing business with black businesses. Mm-hmm. If Dodge wants to go down that road, we need to look at, well, do you do business with black businesses? Do you bank in black banks? Do you use your pension fund with black managers? Do you advertise with black advertising firms? If you're going to use Dr. King's voice, why don't you do what Dr. King said? And when we look at Chrysler and Dodge in terms of their business practices, sounds like they need to listen to Dr. King's speeches rather than use them to sell their cars.
Yeah, that was a theme that was happening overall with Super Bowl. And we've seen this even on something like Dr. King, the national holiday. People only cherry picking a certain portion of that message and trying to use that for their own ends. But as you said, this was a man who was very specific in what he called for, what he thought were important. It was a message of not only unity, which is what a lot of people want to talk about, but it was also a message of justice, racial justice, economic justice. This was someone who was speaking out against wars that he found to be intolerable. This was a person who made those things and organized his life around those things. And so when you look at Dodge, when you look at other companies which are trying to only cherry pick a certain portion of that message, I think your question is a fair one. If you're going to go down that road, if you're going to use Martin Luther King's words to try to sell a product, let's look look at your overall practices. Let's see if you are orienting your business around racial justice, around economic justice. And we know that once we have that kind of harder examination, a lot of these companies don't pass that test. And so for a lot of people, it seems disingenuous for them to then use those words to sell something when at the heart, when it comes to the bottom line, their words, those actions are matching it.
If they match the actions, they could really defend the questions. But when you don't match the actions, whether you're Donald Trump or Chrysler, then you only raise our attention even more to be suspicious of you using something in an exploitative manner. Thank you very much, Astead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Up next, my final thoughts.